Welcome to Muhammad Amir official YouTube channel. Battle of Manzikert. The Turks forced their way onto the world stage with thunderous momentum. Their galactic advance is marked by three critical events that provide historic benchmarks: the hiring of a Turkish guard by the Abbasid Caliph al-Mu'tasim, 833, the disappearance of the Samanid state based in Bukhara, 999, and finally, the Battle of Manzikert, August 1072. After Caliph al-Mu'tasim, the Abbasids in Baghdad were in disarray. A series of incompetent successors left the caliphate ineffective and incapable of ruling the vast territories extending from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indus River. The Turkish bodyguard seized upon this opportunity and became the power broker. In a brief span of 9 years, between 861 and 870, the Turks were brought into power and then got rid of 3 caliphs. The weakness of Baghdad encouraged local rulers to assert themselves. By the year 850, the Aghlabids in Algeria and Morocco were minting coins in their own name. In 868, a Turkish general, Ahmad ibn Tulun, seized control of Egypt and Syria and established the Tulunid dynasty. The Itna Ashribides, challenging the authority of the Sunni Abbasids, seized control of Iraq in 945 and held Baghdad itself under their sway. In 900, the Samanids brought Khorasan under their control and established their authority from the Oxus River in Central Asia into the very heart of Persia. Trade with India and China along the Silk Route and with the Vikings through the Volga River into Europe brought them prosperity. The Samanids are best remembered for their patronage of science, culture, and Farsi literature. Ibn Sina, perhaps the most celebrated scientist of the Middle Ages, did his work in Khorasan under the Samanids. As long as the powerful and brilliant court of the Samanids maintained its power, the Turkish tribes beyond the Amudarya were kept at bay. But powerful internal forces were operating within the Islamic body politic that weakened the Samanids. Towards the end of the 10th century, the global struggle between the Shia, Fatimids based in Cairo and the Sunni, Abbasids based in Baghdad was at its height. The world body of Muslims was rent asunder two competing visions of Islam. The Fatimids, after overrunning North Africa and Egypt, 969, projected themselves into Syria and the Hijaz. Emirs and rulers as far away as Multan, in modern Pakistan, followed the Fatimid lead. The Samanid emirs could not escape these convulsions. One of the Samanids, Nasr al-Sa'id, who ruled Bukhara from 914 to 943, favored the Fatimids. The Khorasanis, who were predominantly Sunni, resented this and the Samanids lost their legitimacy in the eyes of a majority of their subjects. There were economic reasons as well. The Fatimids in Cairo successfully diverted trade between India and Europe from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea. The result was prosperity for Egypt and impoverishment of the Samanids in Khorasan and the Abids in Iraq. The military burden of containing the Turks to the north took its toll as well. Gradually, power slipped from their hands and the Samanid dynasty disappeared in 999. The dissolution of the Samanids opened the floodgates to Turkish migrations. The Karakanis, a Turkish tribe, crossed the Amudarya, Oxus River, and occupied Bukhara in 999. In 962, Alaptugin established another powerful Turkish dynasty further to the south, in Ghazna. The Turkish tribes were restless, constantly on the move and challenging each other for turf. In the subsequent decade, another general Sebugtagin gained control of Ghazna, 977. It was Sebugtagin's son Mahmud who raided India 17 times between 1000 and 1030. Mahmud tried to contain the Turkish flood by dispersing the Turkish tribes and settling them in the far-flung areas of Khorasan. But this was in vain. Between 950 and 1000, a group of Turkish tribes, the Oghuz, who inhabited the areas north of the Caspian Sea, accepted Islam and migrated south to Khorasan. The Oghuz Turks were welded into a remarkable fighting force under their leader Seljuk. Seljuk's son Arslan fought Mahmud of Ghazna to a stalemate. When Mahmud died, 1030, the tide turned decidedly in favor of the Seljuks. The Seljuks were fearless warriors. They considered it their duty to struggle in the path of faith. It was they who introduced the term Ghazi, from the Arabic word gharza, namely armed struggle, into languages spoken by Muslims. As followers of the Hanafi fiqh, they championed the Sunnis against the Fatimids. The Abbasid caliphs in Baghdad, under increasing military pressure from the Fatimids in Egypt and the Byzantines in Syria, were only too glad to accept the protection of the Seljuks. The Itna Ashri Buyids held Iraq under the leadership of Basasiri, who formed an alliance with the Fatimid Caliph al-Mustansir of Egypt to contain the Seljuks. Meanwhile, Tighril Beg had succeeded Arslan, 1036, and a fierce struggle ensued between him and Basasiri for the control of Baghdad itself. The city changed hands several times between 1056 and 1060. Finally, Tighril fought his way into Baghdad in 1060. Basasiri was killed in combat. With Basasiri's death, the Fatimid challenge receded from Persia and Iraq. In 1058, Tighril was anointed by the Abbasid Caliph Cem as Sultan of the East and the West. Charged with the authority to rule and the responsibility to protect the orthodox, Sunni, vision of Islam and defend the Ummah against enemies of the faith. The Turks valiantly discharged this role for over 800 years. By 1058, the Turks had changed the character of the caliphate, and without abolishing it, they had replaced it with a new institution, the Sultanate. This institution prospered during the Age of the Soldiers, through the 18th century, and has survived to this day in parts of the Islamic world. Taking advantage of the internal struggles among Muslims, the Byzantines occupied Armenia and thrust deep into Syria.